So for Turkey to have seen its image transformed internationally in the way that it has is quite an achievement, and that is, I think, in large measure due to Hizmet. To some. I'm Freeman. I was a career diplomat, ambassador to Saudi Arabia during the Gulf War to liberate Kuwait, Assistant Secretary of Defense. And it was really as Assistant Secretary of Defense that I first began to spend time in Turkey, which is a country that I enjoy visiting very much. Well, I think one of the big tests for Hizmet will be the death of Fethullah Gulen, who is not immortal and will pass on from this world. And then we will see whether this is in fact what I think it is, which is a movement based on a philosophy, not on the cult of an individual, and whether it survives. I suspect it will, and I think it has put down enough roots in enough places that even if there is a drought in some part of the world, it will survive and prosper in other parts of the world. The object should be to do good that lives on its own, that doesn't require your continued presence. And I think that the Hizmet, the whole movement, is really based on the teachings of Gülen, not on Gülen as an individual. Of course, he is a charismatic personality, but it's impressive that he does not expose himself very much. So I think he has shown in his own life that he cares more about ideas than he does about personal self-aggrandizement. And so the question of, what is this movement? It doesn't have members, as far as I know. It's got no membership role. It doesn't have a secret handshake or some sort of conspiratorial element to it. And it is very much a phenomenon of modern Islam, modern society, modern civil society, globalization, all of these things. And it seems to me to be quite well adapted to modern conditions. So my guess is that the teachings will live on after the men. Well, if you were asking for a modest, articulate spokesperson to stand up for Islam in the modern world, you couldn't find a more effective one. I know him only through his writings. I've never met him personally. I don't need to. His ideas stand on their own. And my feeling is that generally, there are two kinds of people in the world. There are those who believe that ideas are more important than themselves and who are prepared to give other people credit for things that they themselves invent. And then there are those who want to take credit for everything and build up their own reputation. He's very much the first kind of person. And that is an inspiration. And it makes him, I suppose, a very formidable opponent because he's not in it for himself. I have seen Hizmet not as a political movement because I don't believe it takes political stands per se, but as a movement to increase ethical behavior in the public sphere. Now, in Turkey, of course, where there has been a great battle over the meaning of secularism, whether some people who are extreme Kemalists arguing against any public expression of religious identity, the fact that the Gülen movement is rooted in Islam and is demonstrably Muslim has been disturbing. And I suppose you could say that that represents a sort of political aspect of Hizmet. Well, this is true also of the ruling AKP in Turkey, which has historically stood for things that are quite similar to those that Hizmet advocates in terms of the role of religion in public life. But I don't see Hizmet as being at all political. It's not a political party. It doesn't have candidates. It doesn't have a specific ideology that's applied to economic policy, or it doesn't support particular positions. It is a critic of society, perhaps more than it is an advocate for any particular political position. I think one important aspect of Hizmet and its charitable activities, its assistance to people in need, whether they're in Central Asia or in Africa or elsewhere in the Middle East, is that people have had confidence in the honesty of the organization and the lack of corruption in it. This, I think, also adds to the image of Turkey. Turkey, to be honest, has not always had a reputation for lack of corruption. So to come to grips with a Turkish organization from civil society with a very high reputation for straight dealing and honesty is a revelation. I think Hizmet represents an impulse to do good. And it challenges its members to commit some of their time, some of their resources to helping others. It is a Turkish organization, first and foremost, even though it has become a global phenomenon. It's rooted in Turkey. People think of it as connected to Turkey. Most of its efforts have been focused on helping Turkey to develop, whether domestically or to develop good relations with countries abroad, people in the pan-Turkic sphere of Central Asia, but also people who have no connection to Turkey at all, other than perhaps a trade connection or some passing familiarity. So I think Hizmet basically represents an impulse to do good. It focuses mainly at home in Turkey. But it also does things abroad because it's right to do those things. And it's also beneficial for Turkish image to have it do those things. So I don't understand the objection to how Hizmet deploys its resources. I think the net beneficiary of all of this is really the Turkish people. I think Hizmet has added greatly to the attractiveness of Turkish politics and society. It not only has it helped to introduce foreigners to Turkey who wouldn't otherwise have gone, or might have gone and just seen the ruins of the Greek cities and nothing of modern Turkish society, but it has projected an image of reasonableness for Turkey abroad. So for Turkey to have seen its image transformed internationally in the way that it has is quite an achievement, and that is, I think, in large measure due to Hizmet. I spent some time earlier in my career in diplomacy working for the United States Information Service, USIS. Now, of course, there is no such thing, but this was a kind of public diplomacy, information and cultural projection of the United States abroad. And it played a big role in changing an American image, or at least perhaps giving people a more accurate view of the United States than they otherwise had. Institutions like the Rumi Forum here in Washington, or other institutions that are connected with Hizmet, perform much the same function. Interestingly, they do it entirely on a voluntary basis without support from the government. But if they were to go away, I think Turkey and its image would suffer. I think Hizmet is really unique. It is rooted in religion, but secular in much of its expression. It became, in a sense, a symbol of all of the good things that were happening in Turkey.
I think the emphasis on ecumenical dialogue is quite interesting and quite powerful. I think that the seeming commitment to nonviolence is quite strong.